Welcome to another episode of Living with FASD, Candid Conversations with Patti Kasper. I am your host, and I bring to you both professional and living experience with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. And this is an informational and human interest show for those of us with prenatal exposure to alcohol, our loved ones, and anyone else interested in learning about an FASD and how it impacts life. Today, I am so excited to bring to you not one, but two guests, one of whom you may have seen before if you've been watching, listening for a while. It is Deb Evensen, who has been in the FASD sphere in terms of education for decades, and her good friend, Kee Warner, who heads up White Crow Village, which is a program that many people may recognize the name of. And I'm so excited to welcome you both to the show so we can talk about all the things going on up at White Crow Village and just all the things you guys have been doing for our community for decades. So welcome.
Thank you, Patti, for having us.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
So Deb, you brought to me the idea of let's feature White Crow Village on the podcast. And I'm excited to learn more about it and to introduce all the services and everything that it offers to the audience. So is there anything in particular, Deb, that you want people to be paying attention to as they listen to our conversation?
Yes, White Crow Village provides the opportunity for those living with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders and professionals working with people with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders to really learn about the disability in a very holistic, integrated way. And as far as I know, there are many wonderful programs throughout the field and lots of great people doing great things. But I personally do not know of a program that does what White Crow Village does because of the intensity and the wholeness of their approach. I have seen their camps, their trainings literally change families' lives. So I'll let Kee Warner start talking and tell about White Crow, but I cannot give it a high enough recommendation. It's such a good program. Anyway, I'm excited to be here.
All right. Kee, I'm wondering if you can share, if you don't mind, what brought you to, the field of fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. I'm sure there's a personal connection. If you don't mind sharing, what is that? What keeps you coming back?
Thanks, Patti. I think, and Deb, you're hard to follow. I think it was something that was given to me. My mom was a kindergarten teacher, and I was in the second grade when one of the grade 4 or 5 students, one of the grade 4 or 5 students came down and said, "Kee, come quick, it's Willis." And Willis, who was a couple of grades older than that grade, had broken a chair in the principal's office and was threatening the principal with it. And they came to get me to talk with him. And I don't know how that came about, but Willis is my friend. I was his friend. And looking back, of course, there were no diagnoses in those days. But looking back at the photo and the life trajectory and his family life, it's quite clear that Willis had prenatal alcohol exposure. And he and I spent the rest of that day walking around the concrete block of the school because I wasn't allowed to cross the street, and he wasn't allowed back in the school. So that was kind of my introduction. I am the parent of 5 boys, all of whom have prenatal alcohol exposure. 2 of them by custom adoption.
Hmm.
And uh, both my parents are educators, and I've always been a person that is most at home in the wild, in the bush.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of the way my life has gone, was just in a natural kind of way. So we had a place in rural BC, middle of BC, that really wasn't useful for anything but raising kids. And my kids would want to go to summer camp,
Hmm.
forestry camp, church camp, and I'd sign them up and, you know, say to the camp leaders, there's a couple of things you should know, you know. Probably don't want to give them cocoa at bedtime, and you know, and they would, the camp leaders would, you know, pat me on the head and say, there, Mom, we got this. We know what we're doing. It's okay, go away. And then either later that day or within a short time, they'd call, say, come get them, we can't do this.
Mhm.
But they
And
still
you
needed
would say, did you give them cocoa?
There was nothing to say at that point, because, you know, the kids feel terrible,
Yeah,
you know.
yeah.
They wanted to be there. They didn't mean to do anything wrong. They didn't even know what they were doing wrong mostly. So anyway, they want to come to camp. I said, we had this piece of property. What are you gonna do? Invite a bunch more kids to come to camp at our property. It was in the bush.
Mhm.
So we did that. It was without thought for liability, without much. I just knew that we could bring the kids and they would have a good time.
Hmm.
And we did just kids for almost, the camps were 3.5 weeks long. We got kids that I'd heard about, and Deb had heard about at conferences, because
Hmm.
they were the kids that you know, were fascinated with rocks, whether they were in their hand or whether they were zinging past your ear. And you know, the kids that they had no place for. Social worker, a social worker dropped a child off for a camp. He didn't know that social worker. He had his 5th birthday during camp.
Hmm.
A different social worker picked him up and took him somewhere new at the end of camp.
Mhm.
We had kids that we'd heard about. They came from different provinces. They came, you know. Anyway, we had a pair of kids come, and I didn't talk to the both parents when they left them, but I guess they had almost given up. One of the parents had pretty much given up at that point, and they weren't easy. I'm not a diagnostician. I'm sure that one of them would have had a diagnosis of autism as well as fetal alcoholism.
Mhm.
And the parents went through a major life change during camp. That was why they wanted them to be somewhere else. And shortly after they got home from camp, one of them went into foster care. And then before another couple of months, the other one went into foster care as well. And we thought, if they had been able to see how well their kids had done, that they made friends, that they kept friends, that they were caring, that they could actually pay attention to other kids, and that adults enjoyed them, it would have been different.
Yeah.
And so we thought, no, okay, we better bring families in.
Mhm.
I woke up in the middle of the night thinking, I've started World War III, because we had families coming, with foster families, birth families, and adoptive families all coming to the first time we did this.
Mhm.
And within about a half a day, they were all on the same wavelength.
Mhm.
That part of the program really hasn't changed right from the beginning. We
Yeah.
do large motor outside activities with the kids and the youth, everybody except the parents in the mornings. And Deb's going to talk about nutrition that we do at camp here too, but I'll just kind of introduce it. We do no processed food,
Mhm.
no added sugar, and we do a good protein meal in the mornings, and we have a mid-morning snack. And then lunch, and then a mid-afternoon snack, and then supper, and then a late night snack. Social workers come and say, I gained weight. Why did you do this? I didn't have to eat that much. I just had to eat that often, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that is our program. Is the adults will do a workshop and networking and sharing in the mornings, while the kids and youth do typical camp activities in the for the whole day.
So they get to be kids while the parents really get immersed in some intensive instruction.
It takes a lot of courage, as you will know, for families that are holding on to the good stuff that's happening in their family, but to take it out into the world where people don't understand them, and there's so many things that come in from so many different directions.
Yeah.
And so a good part of the first couple of days is just sharing those stories that nobody else will understand, and feeling like you actually are with your people, and
Yeah.
you know what's going on.
So they can feel for once that they're not alone.
Yes.
And that people get it, they understand it, that they're not making it all up, they don't have factitious disorder, right?
Yeah.
They're not undermining professionals, they're just trying to parent the best they can.
And not just making excuses and letting kids get away with things, and and also have the reasons to ask for certain things from their professionals, their educators, and their doctors and so forth.
Yeah. So how long have you been doing the camps?
Well, the first one I believe was in 1996, just kids. So I think probably the first family camp was 1999. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
25 years.
You know, one of the things that as a professional, my whole career has been working as an educator, working with children with severe behavior disorders. You know, before I got into totally focusing mostly with kids who are neurodivergent with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. But so I've worked with a lot of kids in a lot of programs. I've taught in psychiatric hospital school programs. And one of the things that really got my interest in White Crow was that first camp I went to with you, Kee, in Burns Lake there, Francois. Anyway, and I was, as I was watching, so most camps, so here's all the professionals, and they're talking, and they have all the rules and everything set up, and they're talking, people all kind of talk down to the kids. So, and these are kids with disabilities, and this is how we have to get them to do what we want, you know, and so it's who's in charge and who gets their say. It's different at White Crow. It's the person with the highest IQ isn't necessarily the person that gets the most attention, and or comes up with the best ideas. And I've never been somewhere with some program in all the programs I've worked with where that is demonstrated so easily. I mean, it's just so you don't miss it. And I've never seen it somewhere else, at least at that time. I've not ever seen that. And I was sitting back, I thought I should be taking notes, you know, I mean, it was amazing. And to see everyone have a chance. And so that's why they see these amazing changes. Because they really are all accepted.
Yeah.
And valued. You know, my mantra is acceptance is not enough. Because when things get tight, acceptance goes away. But we work in a Chris Locke gave me this phrase, horizontal relationship, right? And so we hold a whole camp circle at least once every day, and everybody gets a chance to talk. It goes, you know, we use a talking tool, and everybody has a chance to speak or not to speak. You know, the kids come in shy, and some of them. And we said, well, just say your name, you know, if you can, and some can't, and so, but by the end, it's just quite a different story. There's a lot of confidence that happens. The other thing that's unique about us is that from those first camps with just kids. Some of those just kids at that time are now in their 40s, and they are leaders at the King. And so the majority of our crew are adults with fetal alcohol.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, this podcast is probably the one place ever that I will talk without being a co-talker, a facilitator who lives with fetal alcohol.
Mhm.
It just, that's who makes the difference, as you know, Pat.
Yeah.
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 Well,
Yeah.
I am late to the game in terms of having learned that I'm on the spectrum. I didn't figure that out until I was in training with Facets. Before we started recording, you guys mentioned Diane Malbin's name. And that training was so revolutionary. And then I was like recognizing, oh, I do this, I do that. Oh, yeah, I do that too. And so I asked my mom if she drank while she carried me, and she's like, "Oh yeah, every day," because it was the 70s. That's what they did back then. No, it was the 60s. It was the 60s. You know, 10 years, 11 years before FAS the phrase was coined. So it is what it is. But learning that I'm on the spectrum it's brought me freedom and grace from self-judgment and condemnation. We get blamed, shamed, and punished for all our differentness, right? In the way that we do things and not being able to meet people's expectations. And eventually you do that to yourself. So that receiving the diagnosis really helped with that. But I wish that I wish for everybody that they could go to a White Crow Village kind of program, because when I was little, going to diabetic camp was the most powerful experience in my childhood. Year after year, it was more important than Christmas because it was the only time I was normal. Right? And there's such power in that. And I love that you guys have every kind of parent imaginable there at the same time in the same place, hearing the same things and realizing we're not so different one from the other, and all buying into it. And I think that's a great thing about the neurobehavioral model is the trying to always host it to both educators and parents in the same room together.
Yes. Yeah.
So that everyone can learn the same language and have their eyes opened at the same time.
Yeah, that and it would not only bring in, the parents but their grandparents if they'll come, their auntie, their next door neighbor if they'll come, the school janitor, whoever you can get to be on that same wavelength. Yeah.
All the important people for the youth.
Yeah.
That kind of experience changes people's lives and changes families dynamics. I'm remembering this family about 10 years ago. A couple called me. They'd gotten my name from somewhere and they were desperate. They had 5 children. All of them had a diagnosis of a fetal alcohol spectrum disorder. And the older children were getting into trouble. The younger children were having problems at school. The family was holding together by a thread. The relationship between the spouses was tense, and they were desperate. And they called me and they said, "Do you know anywhere we can send the kids they were thinking residential, someplace where they could get some, which is what people think, go and get them fixed,
Right. Let them come back normal.
And they're wonderful people. They were trying really hard to do the best thing for their kids. And I'm talking with them. I just stopped and I said, I don't know what your financial situation is, but there's this camp happening in Canada. These folks are from Alaska. I said, if it was me and I could get my family to that camp, I would do whatever it took to do it. And they did. And they came back and wrote me a letter. And the family's still together. It makes me teary-eyed to think about it. they said there was a before and after that experience, because all of them got that supported environment.
Mhm.
All of them got to what is the saying? We all need to be heard to matter and make sense to ourselves.
Yeah.
All of them, the parents, all the kids got that experience there. And two
That
of their
gives me goosebumps.
does me too. And I know some of the children have helped out because they're adults now, have
Mhm.
helped out in White Crow camps that we're held up here now. So, but what an opportunity that is for a family to get that experience.
Mhm.
Anyway,
I think so many times, you know, people think, well, there's a disability, we have to do this. It's
Yeah.
these people. They're just my kids, you know,
Mhm.
look at them and recognize, and that's, parents often don't have the opportunity, and professionals don't have the opportunity to see people in their comfort zone, in their place where they can contribute the most. And that's, you know, parents are just astonished by the leaders in our group that have fetal alcohol. As a matter of fact, sometimes we've had camps with as many as 70 some people, 40 kids with fetal alcohol. And at one of the second camps, I think our current head of our society is a just recently retired developmental pediatrician. And the first camp that he came to, he loves kids, absolutely loves kids. They'd never been to camp because he grew up in England. And anyway, he's spent the week with us. Many things that he would say about that week that he learned. But the one that sticks out in my mind is we did a panel at the end of camp, and Ken Kissinger, who's my most frequent co-facilitator,
awesome.
presented in that panel. And this doctor who's diagnoses kids, who works with families, his jaw just hit the ground. No, not that can't be your story, right? Because what he had seen was the competence and the confidence and the capability in a situation where not very many people can, you know, be around 40 kids and do all this stuff, right? And we thought we invented the word interdependence, which I guess we probably didn't, but we certainly do that each one of us has a skill that's necessary. Sometimes they overlap, but we need them all.
Yeah.
And so that sort of, oh my goodness, this person that I'm seeing, I'm not seeing a disability, I'm seeing competence.
Mhm.
And that, I think, is a super piece about what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. We all need to get that strength-based perspective. And I think part of the problem is that our greater society, whether it's Canadian or United States, tends to think in silos. Right? We have
Oh, yeah.
this one little silo for ADHD, and we have another little silo for ODD, and another little silo for PTSD. But fetal alcohol just encompasses and overlaps with all of the other silos that are out there, but people miss it all the time, not recognizing that there's stuff going on outside of those silo walls, and they know what to do if it's just the stuff in the silo. But they get really
There is.
confused with what to do with those extraneous bits that are very essential to getting the right picture.
And I think that's something that people, you know, what if you can work with people and you understand FASD, because it crosses so many of those silos. It doesn't just fit in one or the other. And if you can work with the people living on the FASD spectrum, understand that, all of a sudden all those other silos are more understandable too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I found. And I think
Yeah.
that's another value of the camp.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it reaches into every aspect of
Everything.
our
Mhm.
society, yeah, from
Mhm.
cradle to grave, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So you've been doing this 20, almost 30 years, right? Um, what other things does White Crow Village do aside from the camping experience? Because I'm guessing that the season for camping as far north as you are is, I'm guessing, probably fairly short.
Well, we will run a program all year round, and when we say camp, we actually call it a life session. Ken came up with the acronym LIFE for Live In FASD Education. So it's a
I
life
love that.
session. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because people think, well, summer camp for kids, and they don't get the power of it because
Mhm.
it is so powerful. But we've done them all through any season.
Okay.
We're not intense. Sometimes people will contract with us and think, well, you're going to live intense, or the families will, and we'll put the staff in the cabins, and we switch that around, and because it's intense emotional work.
Mhm.
Just to think of the emotions of being able to let down your guard
Mhm.
when for 11 months of the year you're carefully going through all of the things so that in the grocery store you're okay, in the classroom you're okay, in church you're okay, with trying to keep it together, and here you can go, oh, I'm okay.
I
And
don't need to wear my mask.
we don't need to wear a mask, and don't need to think that the story that my child is currently telling is going to get the child protection authorities immediately, because everybody here understands that it's confabulation, and
Yeah.
it's a way to tell a story, right?
Yeah.
And not just think that, yeah. Um, so the other things that we do, not everybody has a week. Not everybody that needs it has a week to be able to come and be immersed. And that's a shame, because that's the best way to learn.
Yeah.
But people were asking us for, for what do you do here? When we were just doing kids, we had a school call us in February saying, can you give a revaccination? Everything was going so well, and now it's kind of wearing off. And well, no, but we can tell you what we do that will help. And so we designed several workshops. People want an hour workshop on fetal alcohol. No, not doing it, not even going to try.
Yeah.
I will spend an hour talking about White Brook Village and what we do, as long as I've got a co-facilitator that lives with fetal alcohol, or my co-facilitator can do it by themselves.
Mhm.
As a matter of fact, nobody who doesn't have fetal alcohol has to be, even though there's 5 families and a bunch of kids, nobody without fetal alcohol has to be there, because they can run it. It grew from their design. Right?
Mhm.
The whole program has grown from the design put together by people with fetal
Mhm.
alcohol.
Mhm.
But so we started doing external workshops. We have what we call a 4-day FASD intensive, and we do 2 days of workshop. And we usually try, we do a Friday, Saturday, so that we can get parents and professionals. They're each just kind of giving up one vital day. And then a break, because it's intense emotional work. And then we do another 2 days. And we also have another workshop. It's a hybrid online and in-person workshop. We can't learn about fetal alcohol online.
No.
It just, you have to have the pheromones or something. You have to actually have it in person. So we'll do a 2-day in person, and then a series of 2 mornings a week on Zoom, and then another 2 days in person. And we've done that really successfully with service providers for our adult services. And then we have a series that we had funding when the government of British Columbia decided that they were going to solve this problem of FASD. So they put out $10 million and scattered it around the various organizations. And so they wouldn't fund anything that was already going, so they wouldn't fund our life sessions. But we had the second year that we had funding to do camps all summer. I went looking for staff, and our rule is 2 weeks clean and sober before you come to work. I thought that was completely happening. But then when I went to find staff the following spring, they were couch surfing at best, you know, homeless. And we looked at it. By the end of that summer, we realized we have to have a housing piece of some sort for us. So we developed a interdependent living, and we bought a duplex, and there were 8 of us living there, 7 of whom live with fetal alcohol. That was supposed to be go forever, right? You come, you get stable, you figure out everything, go to school if you want, all of that stuff, and then go and move out and be on your life, still connected, right? Well, that all happened like that. By the end of the first, I think 14 months, everybody had gone and married high achieving spouses, gone and gotten work, gone and it just, you know, we didn't have anybody left to mentor people. So anyway, so that we had the housing project, and we explored every kind of co-op housing, co-housing, all of those pieces. So we worked through all that insurance and legalities, did all of that. So we have that program. We have an addictions recovery program. And for us, it's, I struggle with the addictions part of it. I think it's environment. I'm a great admirer of Bruce Alexander, who did the initial study about environment and misuse of substances. Rat Park is the name that people usually know about his work. He's done a lot of other work too, but where with returning vets from Vietnam, for instance, they didn't have to go through these really expensive and intensive treatment programs when they came back to an environment that was healthy.
Right.
They just naturally went away. So we incorporated a lot of pieces of recovery programs into our, and we still have people running meetings that are like that, because some of the things of the 12-step programs work really well for some people, and for some other people, the sensory overload and the memory and the need for downtime just doesn't work with some of the, so for some people it works really well. Anyway, so we have
I really appreciate that, Kee, because, you know, I started my career in addictions, gosh, back in 91, way back. And I struggled. Maybe it was from having chronic conditions myself. I struggled to buy into the addictions or as a disease model. I really wrestled with that. And yeah, it's kind of funny too. You'll probably get a kick out of this. At the time, I remember telling the medical director, when I go back to get my doctorate degree, I'm going to create an education. I'm going to compare 2 education models for sugar addiction. I'm going to do the traditional, you shouldn't eat that, it's bad for your kidneys, right? With with the 12-step program, and see how it would play out and what that difference would be. Really thinking I was onto something. And then, you know, decades later, now that I realize alcohol is metabolized as a sugar, I was swimming in sugar water the whole time in my mom's womb, and then yank, someone pulled the drain on that and it all disappeared. And I've been left with biologically based cravings. But I still wouldn't call it a disease.
Yeah.
It is biological, but that doesn't mean it's a disease.
Okay.
Diseases get cured. So,
Yeah,
anyway.
and there's the biology and the social
Mhm.
part, right, together,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
My other most current, frequent co-facilitator is a man named Marcel Gagnon. And in Canada, we have the Juno Music Awards.
Mhm.
It's the big national deal about musicians of all sorts. And he's a two-time Juno finalist. He's
Okay.
one of 20 children, all of whom have severe fetal alcohol, prenatal alcohol exposure.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just
Yeah.
thinking of 20
Yeah,
going through a pregnancy and delivery 20 times is amazing.
yeah, yeah. His mother is amazing.
Yeah.
And I forget why I started with this. Why was I talking about myself
You were talking the Juno Awards
and
and this
diabetes
particular person.
and yeah,
And sugar and
Yeah,
nutrition.
sugar addiction, biologically based.
yeah. Sorry, I've lost it. Yeah, but
Well,
anyway,
I was
cut that part out. Yeah.
speaking of nutrition, that's a really big part of the camps.
Mhm.
And they send out a notice beforehand and to tell people that they're not going to be, offering having anything with sugar. And so people are supposed to, cut out sugar and be prepared so they're not going through sugar withdrawal
Withdrawals.
at camp. And some of them are really because, nutrition is so important for all of us.
Mhm.
But for somebody with fetal alcohol spectrum disorders, it's like super important.
Yeah.
And we have to give the brain the nutrition that it needs to function. And we need really good nutrition. And White Crow Village, the camps, and their trainings, they include this as part of it. And in the camps, they again model and demonstrate, how to make they serve cookies made with applesauce instead of sugar and things like that. And so they show that you can have really good food and really nutritious. None of the kids step by and don't eat. They love the food. So it shows even how to incorporate that part, which is really important.
Yeah.
That's why we have the constant meals. And for the kids that get up early in the morning, we always have something out set out for them that's before breakfast.
Yeah.
So that because our blood sugar level, if it's kept level, it allows us to regulate our emotions better, right?
Mhm.
And so we have fewer blowouts. We have very few blowouts. We have had families that come in that they want to know if we know how to do safe child restraint, right? And we say yes, because we have that in our toolkit. We've never had to use it, not once. And we have had families that are angry with us because we don't have to use it, right? How do you do that? Yeah.
But it's like CPR. It's a tool that you hope you never have to use.
Yeah.
But if you do, you need to know how.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah. So it's the extended programs that have grown out of this is the addictions recovery and education. And I mean, our program is so blessed to have Deb and Diane Maupin and the folks that have done this work in their specific fields to build on, right?
Yeah.
I know now why I was going to talk about Marcel, because when we do, he's an elder, he's an Indigenous elder. And when he and I do our workshops together, he says, we need the clinical part, which by that he means my fact-based medical pieces, and we need the spiritual part. And that's what allows people to heal when they have that guidance of the value system, right? He's a sun dancer, and so he has earned a pipe, and he's earned his eagle bone whistle, and those are physical, concrete things
Mhm.
that when he has a thought, and he'll tell you this, he has a thought of, whoa, maybe no, I don't want to lose my pipe. This is what keeps me, the
Mhm.
concrete. So you don't have to go to the abstract all the time, but you have that concrete value recognition. So incorporating both of those things, and, I mean, for some people, just being in a circle is a spiritual piece.
Mhm.
And I'll tell you just one of my very favorite circle stories, because it's just too precious. And this is this family, the head of the family wrote to me a couple of years ago and talked about her two little people that were very little at the time being in university now. And they had not thought that they would even get through grade school. Anyway, we're in circle, and the little one, I think she was maybe 3, 4. One of those kids that, she'll reach up to be picked up, and you pick her up and she's run up you and she's flipped over and she's done and she's gone, right? Just constant motion. One of the kind of stereotypical things people think about with. And we just, in our circle, in our evening circle, we are a circle. And there's some toys and some kids in between. Like some people, you got to be quiet, got to sit. No, you don't have to be, right? Anyway, we're passing our talking tool, which is a feather in this, and the parent of this family is holding that feather out of reach of the little one. She's trying to climb up, right, holding it out of respect, right? I'm thinking, anyway, it goes around. This is a camp where there's probably 45 people. And it gets around to one of the White Girl staff, and the little one still wants it, and they just give it to her. This is like a child that is in constant chaotic motion.
Mhm.
She takes the feather and she touches the next person on the head with the feather, and the next person in silence, in total just walking, touch all the way around the circle, walks all the way back to that first person and hands the feather back.
Wow.
That picture for that parent of that family completely changed their hopes for that 4 or 5-year-old child, was, close to 30 now. Yeah. So it's not a overtly religious at all, but a definite spiritual experience.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Or some of our other with housing and what's the last of the 5? And yeah, anyway, we have one other outreach program, employment.
Okay.
And so I'll share another story about that. Our young guy we were talking about, that was totally wild the first time he came to camp with his parents. He was 23. He couldn't take it, was too structured, had to go home. His really important job called him and he had to go back. He was actually at the counter at McDonald's. And it was an excuse to get out of the structure, because it was, it's not a rigid structure, but it is a structure.
Mhm.
And he got home and he was lonely. This is what we find with the adults that come to us, is that there's a culture. It's almost like deaf culture. They pick up a story mid-sentence that they stopped the year before and just fit back together. And so he got home and realized he was missing that. He was lonely. And he was a real wild card at 23, not having any structure in his life. And it took some management. He'd be sitting at the table doing something with the crew, and they'd say, stop, we'll do that. Why not? And they go, and I'd be behind him because just knew it was gonna go crazy. But he wanted to come back the next year.
Mhm.
And he called me up and he tells his story so well. I want to come to work next year. And I said, well, are your parents coming with you? No, I don't think I need to. Said, well, we don't have any openings for the foreseeable future. What do you think? I said, anyway, but the rest of the crew said, No, we got him. He had turned 180 degrees over that year.
Mhm.
And from thinking he would never do more than be a McDonald's clerk,
Mhm.
he's now a teacher.
Yay!
He's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And a dad and a husband and yeah.
Yeah. Because so many people, when they think of life with FASD, they just think of the horrible things, the scary outcomes, the
Mhm.
depressing outcomes, right? They just think of challenges upon challenges upon challenges without considering strengths and gifts and talents and
Mhm.
potential,
Yeah.
right?
And being able to look at the way a person is and see strengths.
Mhm.
Recently at a meeting with a group of teachers, and there was a presentation where adults with fetal alcohol had put a bunch of sticky notes up saying what their strengths were, right? And they were wonderful, and the teacher was going, yes, yes, yes. And I'm ever the pain in the side with, my parents were both teachers. Deb will know I appreciate teachers. I need that to come across. I'm not critical of teachers, but anyway, ever the pain. I said, okay, think about your grade 4 and 5 classes, 4th and 5th grade classes, and think about those strengths that these adults have put up, right? Stick-to-itiveness and perseveration. Lots of good ideas, and always, and they looked at those strengths, and they realized that in their grade 4 or 5 classroom, those would have been seen as problems.
Mhm.
So if you can just look at those and say, you know, well,
Reframe
yeah,
them.
this person's handwriting isn't going to get them anywhere, but they could tell a story like crazy. Let's record that,
Yeah.
right? And turn those things, they are strengths.
Yeah. It's all a matter of our perspective, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the frame in which we put something.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
The frame in which we, and you know, I mean, it's really hard with various education systems that for teachers to have the time and the
Mhm.
permission. I have one of our camp leaders that teaches, says he's privileged because he can go in his classroom and shut the door. The
Mhm.
principal knows that it's going to be safe, but he is not following all the protocols of the school because he can't with that group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask, because our time is winding down, let me ask, how does a family, or an adult living with FASD, how do people come to take part in your programs at White Crow Village?
We do have a website, which we unfortunately don't keep up to date as much as we should, but there's
I don't either.
email
Hard.
contact, and people come from the East Coast, they come from Michigan, they come from Florida, Washington to our programs. It's, you know, so there's a lot of, it's kind of hard on families that travel and then
Yeah.
spend a week, but they do that. So just contact us and we'll tell you when we're
Okay.
doing it.
Aside from travel costs, because there's no way to calculate that, right?
Yeah.
Aside from travel costs, what ballpark, what would the costs be, like a family of 4?
Right. And I always have to preface this with don't panic. It's way more than any normal family with fetal alcohol can afford. And so that's why we do our workshops. They subsidize our families. The actual cost is about $1,500 per person. And that's, I mean, you know, by the time for my family, by the time I'm through replacing appliances because of the proprioceptive piece and things getting broken unintentionally, there's no way that most families can afford that. So we help with finding service club funding and
Okay.
but yeah, the actual cost is about $1,500 per person.
Okay. So that could be something that families, for instance, down here, we have a lot of service clubs like Lions Club and Kiwanis and stuff like
Mhm.
that. People could appeal to the
Yes.
service clubs in their community and say, this program is really going to benefit our family and therefore our community.
And we will help with those, with that too, and even do
Yeah.
presentations, Zoom or however, to the service club if,
That's awesome.
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I am so honored to have had you both on the program, and I appreciate everything that you have shared. I'm so excited by the quality of what you guys offer there. I'm just going back to how I resonated with diabetic camp and the power of that. And this is even more so because I know I felt very isolated being the only diabetic in my community. But with FASD, entire families feel isolated.
Yes, yes.
And so the the magnitude of the importance and the power of this is just staggering. So I'm really excited to help promote it to the Living with FASD audience. And I'm so glad that you were able to come on air today.
It's an honor. Thank you, Patty.
So for everyone else, I can't believe our time is wrapping up already. I hope that you will hop on over to patreon.com and / living with FASD podcast. Again, the community is free. This podcast will always be free, but if you would like to join, you can do so at the free level, but you could also support the costs of putting this podcast out every week by donating $5, $10, or $15 on a monthly basis. It will help pay for all the programs I use in producing the podcast and getting it out each and every Monday. And I'm just so grateful for the time you took out of your day, your week to listen to the program. And I hope that you have a rich, full, and blessed week to come, and that you'll come back again next Monday for another episode of Living with FASD. Take care, everybody.
Bye.